What if everything you touched turned to gold? Your bills, gone. Your debts, erased. Every surface you graze becomes pure wealth in an instant. Sounds incredible, right? Now imagine reaching out to hug your daughter and watching her skin harden and turn cold and yellow before your eyes. Imagine sitting down to eat and feeling your food solidify into metal the moment it touches your lips. Imagine dying of thirst because every drop of water you bring to your mouth becomes a nugget of gold before it can reach your throat. That's the wish King Midas made. And the gods gave it to him. Every single word of it. This is the story of the man who had everything and nearly lost it all, because he forgot to be careful about what he asked for. Welcome back to Mythos Uncovered, and today we're back in the ancient world with one of the most famous cautionary tales ever told. A king, a wish, and a curse disguised as a dream come true. Let's get into it. Midas was the king of Phrygia, an ancient kingdom in what is now central Turkey. In the historical record, there was actually a real King Midas. Archaeologists have found evidence of a Phrygian ruler by that name dating to around the 8th century BC, and some ancient sources suggest he may have been extraordinarily wealthy, even by the standards of ancient kings. But the Midas of mythology is something else entirely. He is less a historical figure and more a portrait of a very specific kind of human failing. The failure to understand the difference between wanting wealth and actually knowing what wealth is for. The myth, as most people know it, comes primarily from the Roman poet Ovid, writing in his Metamorphoses around the 1st century AD. But the story is much older than that, woven through earlier Greek traditions and referenced by writers going back centuries before Ovid put his definitive stamp on it. It begins with a satyr named Silenus. Satyrs in Greek mythology were wild half-human creatures associated with the god Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation. Silenus was no ordinary satyr. He was the oldest and wisest of them, a teacher and companion to Dionysus himself, and he was notorious for his love of wine. One day Silenus wandered away from Dionysus's retinue, drunk and disoriented, and ended up collapsed in the rose gardens of King Midas's palace. The king's servants found him and brought him before their master. Now here is where Midas makes his first decision, and it's actually a good one. Rather than punishing Silenus or throwing him out, Midas recognized who he was and treated him with extraordinary hospitality. He feasted Silenus for 10 days and 10 nights before personally escorting him back to Dionysus. The god of wine was so grateful for the kindness shown to his old companion that he offered Midas whatever he wished. Any reward, name it, and it was his. And Midas said, "I wish that everything I touch would turn to gold." Dionysus paused. Some versions of the myth say he looked at Midas with something close to sadness, because he already knew what was coming. He tried, in some tellings, to get Midas to reconsider. "Are you sure? Is that truly what you want?" But Midas was certain, and a wish is a wish. Dionysus granted it. At first it was everything Midas had imagined. He touched a twig, and it became a gleaming rod of gold. He picked up a stone, and it sat heavy and brilliant in his palm. He ran his hands along the columns of his palace, and they transformed, glittering, into solid gold. He must have felt like the most powerful man alive, like a god himself. Then he sat down to eat. The bread he reached for turned to gold. The meat on his plate hardened and gleamed before he could lift it to his mouth. He reached for his wine, and the liquid turned to metal before it touched his lips. The hunger set in, then the thirst. And Midas began to understand, slowly and then all at once, exactly what he had done. The story reaches its most devastating point when his daughter comes to comfort him. She sees her father's distress and runs to embrace him, and the moment her arms go around him, she becomes a statue of gold, flawless, beautiful, and completely, irreversibly still. Midas had turned his own child into a sculpture, the thing he had wished for, the thing that was supposed to make him the richest man alive, had taken from him the one thing no amount of gold could ever replace. He fell to his knees and begged Dionysus to take the gift back. And here is something genuinely surprising about this myth. Dionysus said yes. He told Midas to travel to the source of the river Pactolus and wash his hands in it. Midas did so, and the golden touch flowed out of him and into the river. Some ancient writers claimed this was why the sands of the Pactolus River glittered with gold. A real river, in a real place, that ancient sources describe as genuinely rich with gold dust. The myth was the ancient world's explanation for where that gold came from. Hey, quick pause right here. If you're enjoying this, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It genuinely helps this channel grow and means more myths, more stories, more uncovering. All right, back to Midas. But the story of Midas doesn't end there. In Ovid's account, he gets himself into trouble a second time, and this time the consequences are considerably more embarrassing. After his experience with the golden touch, Midas had developed a deep distrust of wealth and luxury. He retreated from palace life and took to wandering the countryside, worshipping Pan, the rustic god of the wild and music. One day Pan and Apollo got into an argument about music. Pan played his pipes and declared himself the superior musician. Apollo played his lyre. A mountain god named Tmolus was appointed judge, and he declared Apollo the winner without hesitation, because Apollo was the god of music itself. Everyone present accepted the verdict, except Midas. Midas loudly disagreed. He said Pan's music was better. Apollo was not pleased, and Apollo, when displeased, had a very particular sense of humor. He decided that if Midas was going to have the judgment of a donkey, he should have the ears to match. He reached out and transformed Midas's ears into the long, gray, hairy ears of a donkey. Midas was mortified. He hid his ears under an enormous turban and told absolutely no one. Only his barber knew the truth, because someone had to cut his hair, and the barber was sworn to secrecy on pain of death. But the secret burned inside him until he couldn't hold it anymore. He went out into a field, dug a hole in the ground, whispered into it. Midas has donkey's ears, and covered it back up. But reeds grew over the hole, and when the wind blew through them, they whispered the secret to anyone who passed. The whole kingdom eventually knew. It is one of the funniest endings in all of classical mythology, and it is absolutely intentional. Midas, the man who reached too far with his wish, who prized gold above everything human, who then turned his back on civilization entirely, still couldn't learn to keep his mouth shut. He spent the rest of his life with donkey's ears, a permanent, public, ridiculous reminder of his own poor judgment. The legacy of King Midas has lasted remarkably well. The phrase "the Midas touch" entered the English language as a way of describing someone who turns everything they get involved with into gold. Usually used as a compliment, which is interesting, because anyone who knows the myth knows the Midas touch was a disaster. We flip the moral completely. We celebrate what the myth was warning against. In business culture and the language of success and ambition, Midas lives on as shorthand for limitless wealth. But the original story is about something much darker and much more honest. The gap between what we think we want and what we actually need. Midas wanted gold. What he needed was to eat dinner with his daughter. He didn't know the difference until it was almost too late. So, King Midas, a man who got exactly what he asked for and nearly lost everything because of it. A myth about greed, yes, but more precisely a myth about the failure of imagination. The inability to think past the wish to what the wish actually means. Every generation retells this story because every generation has people in it who are absolutely certain that more money will solve their problems. Midas was certain too. The myths always have more in them than we first think. That's why we're here. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Mythos Uncovered. It genuinely means a lot that you spend your time here with me diving into these ancient stories. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss a new myth. And drop a comment below telling me what myth or legend you want me to cover next. Every single comment gets read, and the next video might just come from you. I'll see you in the next one.